Guys, what's up? It's Collegio. Today I'm going to talk about Iran and Israel. This is a case where there is so much ideology embedded into both sides' arguments. There are people who believe that Israel can do no wrong, and there are people who believe that Israel can do nothing but wrong. I'm going to break it down and give an ultra-realist take on what's really going on. Now, first, I'm not going to give a 4,000-year lecture on the history of the Middle East. There are a million videos, but there are a couple of contextual dates that I need to just get into for a little bit of context. The first is 1948. This is the year that the country of Israel that we know today became a country. What had happened previously is it was a protectorate of Britain. The British Palestine was taken after World War I from the Ottoman Turks, whose empire had disintegrated after World War I. The Brits took control of it. At that period of time, in that territory, it was roughly 30% Jews and about 70% Palestinian Arabs, 15% of whom were Christians, because they were still a holy land at that time. The rest were Muslim Palestinians. When Britain decided to leave, because this is a very, very unstable situation, Britain left, and there was a war that was fought between the Jews, the Palestinian Arabs, and all of the Arab neighbors. They fought with the Jews in Israel. Jews won, and they formed what is today the modern state of Israel. There were a series of successive wars where those countries came in and attacked again in 1956, 1967, 1973. And then all of that was in high tension until there were finally some peace efforts that began in the late 1970s. The second date that I wanted to bring to your attention is 1979. That's the date that the modern Iranian government came to power through the Iranian Revolution. Previous to that, Iran was a kingdom. It was ruled by the Shah. The long line of kings in Iran. It was a relatively progressive state culturally for the Middle East, but it was still a very corrupt police state, essentially. The Iranian mullahs, the religious fundamentalist Shiites, took control in 1979 through a violent revolution, and that is the government that rules today. They are ideologically opposed by ideology, by religious ideology to the existence of a state of Israel, which puts them at complete loggerheads with the existence of the Jewish state that exists in Israel today. So what is going on right now? Why is this conflict happening now? And the answer is that Iran is a regional power. It has 92 million people. They are a large power in that area. They seek to be a hegemon. Hegemon is a dominant power in the region. So you can kind of think of Iran wanting to be to the Middle East what Russia is to the Central Asian countries or what China is to the Southeast Asian countries. They kind of want to be a dominant power in the area. Israel isn't the only one that opposes Iran, however. A lot of the other Arab countries in that area, which are not Iranian, which are not Persian, which are not Shiite Muslim, predominantly Saudi Arabia, also oppose Iran. So Iran is having trouble becoming a hegemon. That being said, they are the chief source of instability in the Middle East today. They support the Hezbollah military, paramilitaries that have been fighting with Israel nonstop since the 1980s. They support Hamas since the early 2000s. They've supported Hamas, which is the extremist wing of the Palestinian government that ended up ruling the Gaza Strip since the around 2006. And they also support the separatist Houthis after the Yemeni government collapsed in 2011. So they are kind of wherever there is an opportunity to expand their influence and undermine the powers, they are there doing that. Now, the key event that launched what's happening today was, of course, October 7th, 2023. This is when Hamas launched its huge offensive into southern Israel. They killed over 1,000 Israelis. Israel retaliated in mass force. They basically turned Gaza mostly into rubble at this point. 57,000 Gazans have lost their lives. About 1,700 Israelis have lost their lives. So this has been going on for 18 months, almost 2 years. Now that the trouble is kind of under control in Gaza, Israel has changed its attention to Iran because they believe that Iran was kind of behind the attack on of October 7th. Interestingly, Israel was actually making progress toward normalizing relations with Saudi Arabia right before the October 7th attack, and that's one of the reasons why they believe that Iran was behind it. Okay, so the question here is, what is the cause of this? Is it nuclear ambitions of Iran? Now, Iran has had nuclear ambitions to have a nuclear program, and Israel says that that's why they're attacking Iran right now, because they want to stop the nuclear threat. We've heard this before. This is an important sidebar. Okay, so two things about the nuclear program. Number one, Iran says that this is a nuclear program that they have for peaceful reasons. They want to have like nuclear power plants, okay? Iran has the second highest natural gas reserves in the world. They have literally limitless, cheap, efficient natural gas reserves. They don't need nuclear. The only reason why they're getting nuclear is because they want to have nuclear weapons, because that's what makes them a hegemon. To believe other than this is frankly naive, okay? So like all the talk about peaceful nuclear, it's a bunch of baloney, all right? Ultra-realist talking. The second thing, is Israel going after Iran right now because of nuclear weapons? I don't think so, all right? I don't think Iran is not particularly close to developing a nuclear weapon now. I think that that's a foil for what Israel really wants to do, which is to overthrow the current regime. They want to do regime change in Iran and overthrow the mullahs and have a government that is less antithetical to their existence. So a couple of things are going on. Trump is in there saying he wants to negotiate some kind of peace, all right? I'm skeptical if this is going to work. It's negotiating between the Israelis and the Iranian government, the mullahs who control the theocracy in Iran, is like the Sith and the Jedi. Okay, like there is blood hatred here. And when people are that dug in on ideology, you might be able to get some kind of like temporary negotiated peace, but there's no meaningful change here is going to happen through negotiation as long as the people who are in power continue to be in power. All right. That's why Israel is going in. Israel doesn't want negotiations. Trump thinks he might be able to save it. Maybe that's what he thinks. Maybe he's just talking. I don't know. But what Israel really wants here is regime change. So then the question is, if they can't negotiate some kind of settlement, some kind of peace to get rid of the nuclear program, will the United States get involved? Now, Israel wants the United States involved. They want cover, right? They don't want to be the lone wolf taking down Iran, because that'll make them even more hated than they already are in the region and in the world, okay? Does the United States want to get involved in a conflict in Iran that we don't have any direct tie to? Not really, all right? So they'll bring up, oh, they say that America is the great Satan. They do, but the reality to American involvement in the Middle East, if we really are looking at the data and we're honest with ourselves, we have a pretty terrible track record at like creating stability too. All right, the Iran actually goes in and actively tries to undermine stability, but the United States, in our efforts to create stability, it hasn't really worked all that much. George W. Bush, of course, had the Iraq War. We spent trillions of dollars. Iraq is probably less stable today than it was under Saddam Hussein, maybe a little bit less of a threat to the United States, but not, ISIS originated out of Iraq, and that was like the most militant of all the Islamic groups, all right? On the flip side, Obama, after the Green Revolutions, Democratic Revolutions of 2011, called for the overthrow of a lot of different governments, but the transition of a lot of governments, Syria for one, and now Syria is ruled by someone that is arguably worse than they were before. So the United States pressing for regime change in these areas has a pretty terrible track record. So the question is, do we really want to get involved? But then there's the third flip side, which is, well, could it really get any worse than the mullahs who are currently running Iran, right? Like, could it actually get worse than that? Could you actually end up with somebody that's even more destabilizing to the Middle East than Iran? And that's where I'm like, I don't know. I mean, you'd have to have an extraordinarily bad chain of events to get somebody that's even worse than the Ayatollah Khamenei, who's currently the ruler of Iran. The German Chancellor Merz said something very interesting. I think the Germans are very good at kind of like realpolitik and kind of like cutting through the BS. He says it's a good thing that Israel is doing the world's dirty work. Basically, nobody wants these mullahs to be in power. Everybody knows that they're bad for stability. Everybody knows that they're bad for the Iranian people, by the way. If they had things like markets and freedom and economies, the people would probably be better off, all right? And certainly they don't need to be getting their hands dirty with destabilizing Yemen. Like, why are they even there, right? So everybody knows that Iran's government is a toxin to the area and to the world. Israel is the one who is most directly impacted, and they're the ones who are really fighting. They have their opponent up on the ropes. They're bloodied. The question is, do we let Israel take the final punch and knock the mullahs out? One thing about Donald Trump, he has said in the past that, the Middle East is a rough neighborhood, I think was his term, meaning that he appreciates that it takes firm, strong power in order to create stability in these areas. I think he knows that a degree of force is necessary in the Middle East. And I suspect that he's maybe trying to negotiate something, but that in the end, we could end up seeing Israel knock out this power that's been problematic to the whole region. Will the United States get involved? That's the big question. And if we do we get involved in any kind of meaningful way? And I just don't know the answer. So what do you think? Drop a comment. Let me know. We'd love to hear what you think. Thanks for watching.